Con el permiso del excelentísimo embajador del Estado de Israel, el señor Wiesenthal, rabinos y representantes de las comunidades e instituciones judías en México, miembros del patronato del Colegio OLAMI-ORT, miembros de la mesa directiva de la comunidad sefaradí y de todos los aquí presentes, doy inicio a este evento de conmemoración de Yom Hashoá Be'Apura. Invito al señor Wiesenthal, embajador de Israel en México, a que suba al escenario a dirigirnos unas palabras.
Muy agradecido por esta invitación, siempre un privilegio, de verdad, estar en el Colegio OLAMI. Agradezco a los directivos, a Abimeir, su equipo, al presidente del patronato, mi amigo, al cuerpo docente. Dirijo un saludo con mucho cariño a los presidentes de las comunidades, de las instituciones, agradeciendo a la comunidad de sefaradí por haber contribuido a este evento. Quisiera esta vez, en lugar de hacer un discurso, compartir con ustedes algunas reflexiones. Es siempre un día muy particular para un servidor, para nuestra familia, y recordamos el comportamiento valioso de una familia francesa, la familia Bach, que estrecharon, la mamá y sus dos hijas estrecharon una mano a mi papá, sus dos hermanas y tres de sus primos, que después de la guerra se establecieron aquí en México, tres de 5 hermanos de la tribu, es más que una familia, la tribu Rubinstein. Y a mediodía hoy tuve la oportunidad de contar esta historia junto con la hija de uno de mis primos, que creó también una exposición sobre nuestra historia familiar. Entonces, son siempre momentos impactantes, pero quisiera también dirigirme a las generaciones de los jóvenes. Es siempre importante recordar el mandamiento de Zahor en el contexto bíblico, Zahor Asher Asa Lecha Amalek, pero también recordar el bien de los justos entre las naciones, el bien de las personas que decidieron de actuar y no guardar la postura de indiferencia. Y tenemos nosotros, que hemos sufrido durante tantos siglos, tenemos la responsabilidad, tenemos este papel a desempeñar y a transmitir también la estafeta, la antorcha de generación a generación, para asegurar que nuestra sociedad tendremos el principio de cero tolerancia a cualquier forma de discriminación racial, de segregación, de odio, es nuestra responsabilidad, es la responsabilidad de nuestros jóvenes, y estoy convencido que gracias al sistema educativo de esta maravillosa comunidad judía que en México, de las escuelas van a egresar alumnos, ciudadanos, miembros responsables de las comunidades judías, de la sociedad y de la humanidad. Una última palabra, quizás mejor en inglés, to acknowledge the presence of the granddaughter of Simón Wiesenthal, and just to say how privileged I feel to be here in your presence. As a teenager, I read the biography of your grandfather, and then as a young diplomat posted in Brussels, I was fortunate enough to meet him at the premiere of the screening of Schindler's List in Brussels. And it's a memory that I will cherish until the last days of my life. So thank you, and thank you, Olami, for inviting the granddaughter of Simón Wiesenthal. Thank you very much.
Le pido al director general del Colegio OLAMI-ORT, el Moré Abimeir, suba al estrado a compartir su mensaje.
Estamos en el mes de Nisan. Terminamos ahorita una fiesta de Pesaj. Hoy en la mañana conmemoramos aquí en Olami con los niños el Día del Holocausto y del Heroísmo, y la fiesta última de este año es Shavuot. Las tres fiestas tienen muchísimo, o los días conmemorativos tienen muchísimos conexión y relación. Y me permitan, quiero explicar un poco de la conexión que tienen estas tres fechas importantes. En 1951, casi 3 años después que declararon el Estado de Israel, juntó la Knesset para fijar la fecha del día del Holocausto y heroísmo. Tenían discusión en qué fecha escoger. Y un miembro de la Knesset, del Parlamento israelí, ofreció que el mes de Nisan va a ser el mes que conmemoramos Yom Hashoá. Porque la revolución de Gueto Varsovia empezó en la víspera de Pesaj. Y él dijo que como judíos no podemos conmemorar en la víspera de Pesaj un día de luto, estamos a esperar 6 días hasta que termina Pesaj para conmemorar este evento. Este evento que resalta la resistencia del pueblo judío ante la maldad en el mundo en esta época. ¿Qué tiene que ver el día del Holocausto con Shavuot, que es la última fiesta que tenemos? Shavuot es una fiesta que festeja un valor importante, el Gesed, la bondad. En la Megilá de Ruth aparece una bondad que es el alto nivel de bondad en el judaísmo, que es Gesed y Mametim, es bondad con los muertos. Es la más alto Gesed que un judío o ser humano puede hacer, porque los muertos no pueden regresar un favor y una bondad de regreso. Simón Wiesenthal, con toda su vida, después que salió de 5 campos, hizo un Gesed y Mametim, una bondad con los muertos. Dedicó toda su vida a buscar justicia en manera legal para que su muerto no va a desaparecer. Doy la bienvenida a la doctora Racheli, que quiero compartir que en la mañana estaba aquí con todos los niños de prepa y secundaria de Olami, que salieron impactados de su testimonio. Gracias.
Solicito la presencia del presidente de la comunidad sefaradí, el ingeniero David Lichi, para compartirnos unas palabras.
Es un honor hablarles hoy acerca de una persona excepcional, que ha dejado una marca en nuestra comunidad y en el mundo en general. Simón Wiesenthal no solo fue un sobreviviente del Holocausto, sino también un incansable defensor de la justicia, un faro de esperanza y una voz para las víctimas del Holocausto. La vida y el legado de Wiesenthal son un testimonio de la persistencia y la fuerza del pueblo judío frente a adversidades inimaginables. Sobrevivió a los horrores de los campos de concentración nazis, perdiendo a familiares en las atrocidades del Holocausto. Sin embargo, sobrevivió y salió adelante con una determinación: buscar justicia. Después de la guerra, Wiesenthal dedicó su búsqueda de criminales de guerra nazis para llevarlos a la justicia. Gracias a él, más de 1.100 criminales nazis fueron enjuiciados. Pero los esfuerzos de Wiesenthal fueron mucho más allá de buscar justicia en los tribunales. También trabajó incansablemente para educar al mundo sobre el Holocausto, combatir el antisemitismo y promover la tolerancia y el entendimiento entre personas de diferentes credos y orígenes. Creía que la memoria del Holocausto debería de servir como un poderoso recordatorio de los peligros del prejuicio, el odio y la discriminación, y que era nuestra responsabilidad asegurarnos de que tales atrocidades no vuelvan a suceder. Simón Wiesenthal escribió varios libros. En su libro El girasol, reflexiona sobre si debe perdonar al soldado nazi y si tiene el derecho de hacerlo en nombre de todas las víctimas del Holocausto. Este libro me recordó algo que le pasó a mi suegra, que también es sobreviviente. En una de las marchas de la vida, un joven alemán se acercó a darle una flor y pedirle perdón. Al principio, ella no supo qué hacer y recibió esa flor porque no se lo esperaba y la tomaron por sorpresa. Sin embargo, ese evento le causó mucho conflicto. Mi suegra no podía perdonar en nombre de otros judíos y ese joven no tenía de qué pedir perdón. Él ni siquiera había nacido durante el Holocausto. El libro Justicia y Nueva Enlace ofrece la perspectiva de Wiesenthal sobre la importancia de buscar la justicia como un camino hacia la sanación y prevención de futuros crímenes atroces. La importancia de educar al mundo de lo que pasó, haciendo justicia por la vía legal. Esa fue su forma de documentar los crímenes nazis durante la guerra. Sin embargo, cada vez hay más gente que niega que existió el Holocausto, y solo documentando lo sucedido no se podrá borrar el pasado. Hoy en día, a medida de que disminuye el número de sobrevivientes, es importante que busquemos nuevas maneras de recordar y transmitir lo que pasó a las generaciones más jóvenes. Es el deber de todos nosotros y de las comunidades no dejar que se olvide la Shoah. Esa es la verdadera importancia de este evento. Wiesenthal dice que muchos sobrevivieron para contar lo que pasó y no dejar que se repita. Así que este día y estos actos son lo que le da sentido a sus vidas. En resumen, Simón Wiesenthal fue un líder inspirador y valiente, que nos dejó significativas lecciones sobre la importancia de la justicia, la educación y la acción en la defensa de los derechos humanos. Su legado continúa siendo una fuerte inspiración y motivación para luchar por un mundo libre de opresión y persecución, un mundo más justo y comprensivo. Muchas gracias.
Invito al rabino Moisés Chicurel a subir al escenario.
Esta noche, recordando a Simón Wiesenthal y junto con él a todos los seres humanos, hombres y mujeres, Yehudim y no Yehudim, que tuvieron que vivir, morir y algunos sobrevivir y reconstruir su vida después del Holocausto. Quiero leer este pequeño testimonio de Moshe Ailion, un sobreviviente de Salónica, enteramente en ladino, para poder entender el valor de la unión de Am Israel. Los vagones eran vagones de bestias, vagones de meter ropas y este modo de cosa. Mos procurimos subir y los alemanes gritando decían: presto, presto. A la fin, todos subieron a los vagones. Nosotros, la familia nuestra, estábamos en Junto, todos en un vagón. Y a la mediodía, el tren empezó a caminar. Lleno el vagón de estrechura, chiquiticos lloraban, viejos se quejaban. No había ahí nada de separado, todo estaba en junto. Era muy difícil esta cosa. El camino duró 7 días. A la medianoche, cerca de la medianoche, el tren no posó y estábamos seguros que arribamos a Cracovia. Cuando abrieron las puertas, había un terreno muy grande y ahí estaba entero de luces y ahí había un grande tumulto. Entendimos que no era Cracovia. A la fin todos estábamos afuera de los vagones y ahí, por la primera vez, vi en estas personas que estaban con los vestidos de los prisioneros de los campos nazistas y dije en mí: ¿qué es aquí? Es prisión. Después que todos ya subimos y estuvimos abajo, quitaron los alemanes una orden. Debíamos apartar en 4 grupos. Era claro, el abuelo mío se iba a ir con los viejos, el tío mío y yo nos íbamos con el grupo de estos que pueden laborar, la abuela, mi madre, mi tía con un niño de 1 año que tenía, iban al trecho grupo y solo por mi hermana pensamos ¿qué debíamos hacer? Porque ella tenía entonces 16 años. Nos aconsejimos y la familia dijeron: ¿para qué nos despartimos? Que se vaya con todas las mujeres. Y a aquel punto la condenamos a la muerte, mas no lo sabíamos. Arribamos a un lugar que había una puerta de fierro muy grande y arriba escribía: Arbeit macht frei. No sabíamos lo que es. Decía yo: ¿dónde estamos? ¿Qué es acá? No había respuesta. La situación de los judíos de Grecia en los campos era más difícil de los otros judíos, por modo que los judíos de la Europa hablaban yiddish. Y yiddish asemeja mucho al alemán. Nosotros, los judíos de Grecia, de Salónica principalmente, lo que hablábamos era español, que hoy se llama ladino. Y estos que nos hablaban a Mos, cuando entendían bien que no sabíamos yiddish, se maravillaban. Decían: ¿no sabéis yiddish? ¿Qué modo de judíos sois vosotros que no sabéis yiddish? Nosotros decíamos: somos judíos. Veíamos que ellos no estaban convenciendo. Y entonces dijimos en junto: Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Al punto que decía Shema Israel, ellos ya sabían que somos judíos y se maravillaban. ¿Cómo es que hay judíos que no saben yiddish? El día de la liberación, después de muchos años, después de que Moshe pasó por varios campos, sobrevivió a las marchas de la muerte, llegaron los tanques de la liberación llenos de soldados americanos. Y el testimonio de Moshe termina así: cuando vio llegar los tanques, escuchó que los llamaban, entendió que eran Yehudim y que los estaban llamando en un idioma que él no conocía, que era el inglés, y dijo así: en Sunto había en un lugar un grupo de personas que entendimos que son ashkenazís. Amamos llamaron y decían: venid acá, hablaban y hablaban. Y en Sunto empezaron a cantar la tikvá. Con esto entendimos, ya escapimos, ya se escapó para nosotros, estábamos libres. Hoy debemos de tener la reflexión de honrar a nuestros antepasados. Somos Yehudim y estamos acá y estamos vivos. En un momento en donde la separación y la fragmentación de Am Israel recuerda los 2000 años de exilio, es el momento de pensar que si nosotros queremos honrar a todos los Yehudim, hombres, mujeres, niños, ancianos, que dieron su vida para que nosotros estemos acá, hay una sola cosa que debemos hacer: vivir honrosamente y vivir como un solo pueblo. Eso es lo que debemos hacer para honrarlos, en Yiddish o en ladino. Vamos a pedirles que se pongan por favor de pie y en su honor reflexionemos mientras decimos Kadish. ¿Cómo vamos a hacer para que este mundo sea mejor? ¿Cómo vamos a hacer para que Am Israel sea uno? Itgadal veitgadash merabá ve'alma diberach yuteh ve'amlich malchuteh ve'yatzmach kulkaneh v'yikarev meshicheh בחייכון וביומכון, וחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמך רבה מברך לאדם לעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמך לקדושה בריחו לעילא מן כל ברכתה שירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה ואמינן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה חיים ושבע וישועה ונחמה ושזבה ורפואה וגאולה וסליחה וכפרה ורווח והצלה לנו ולכל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום עם נאמיו ורחמיו יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Invito al Hazán Jaime Afía a recitar el Barer Rahamim y el Iskor.
Menuhatam יזכור אלוהים את כל הנשמות של כל קהילות עמך בית ישראל, מגולת אלוהים שעלו על מוקד קדוש שמך גדול, בשנים 6 מיליון אנשים ונשים, ילדים וילדות, בחורים ותולות, זקן וטף, עוללים ועולקים שנהרגו, שנכתבו בהסביעות איומה ונשרפו ברצח המוני ליד וקברים, בטוחים במקומות מגוריהם, בערים, ביערות ובכתרים, ויתרם ומלוק אסון לבטח, למחנות דרבון וימותו בעיתות משונות ואיומות. נספו ברעב ובשמה ועבודה, בפרכת המחלה את הגוף והנפש, במחלות נוראות, באש ובמים, בחניקה התרעלה בתאי גזים, ונשרפו לעבר במשעני האש של מחנות השמדה איומים בגרמניה ופולניה. מחנות מוות שתכננה וקיימה והממשלה הניסית השטנית של עם אברסכים הגרמני יחד עם הרוסים עוזריהם משאר העמים, שהיו בעשה ובמטרה אחת להשמיד ולהרוג ולאבד את העם היהודי ולמחות את ספר היהדות ולחלות גיליון. מחלת כל אשר בשם ישראל יקרא, אין נקמות שופט הארץ אשר גמול שבעתיים לסוללי עמך. זכור שבת שמע ישראל, שנזכור למוות, אל תדום נדמי אבות ובנים, אמהות וילדיהם. רבנן ארצי הלבנון, אדירי התורה ותלמידיהם, ונקלט המאמינים, תעלה לפני חסרונותיך, לנקום במהרה לעינינו את נקבת בניך ובנותיך הקדושים והטהורים שלא זכו לקבר ישראל, ככתוב כי דם עבדיו יקום ונקם ישיב לצרם וכפר אדמתו עמו.
Campo de concentración Mauthausen, Austria, 1945. Entre aquella masa de humanidad había miembros de diferentes estratos sociales, ricos y pobres, cultos e incultos, hombres religiosos y agnósticos, bondadosos y egoístas, valerosos y cobardes. Un destino común los había convertido en seres iguales.
¿Qué pasa, Simón? ¿Estás bien? ¿Cómo podría estar bien aquí, donde todos portamos tu certificado de defunción, en espera de solo ponerle fecha?
Viví una experiencia que me dejó muy preocupado, pero no sé si compartírselas, no sé si puedan comprender.
¿Hay algo que aún no podamos comprender? Cuéntanos si crees que eso aliviará tu pesar.
¿Habían notado que en cada tumba de un soldado nazi hay plantado un girasol? Lo noté hoy de camino al hospital. Parecen emerger del interior de la tierra, asomándose hacia el exterior, como un periscopio. Los muertos recibiendo luz.
¿Eso te tiene preocupado?
No. Bueno, en parte.
¿Pasó algo en el hospital?
Sí. Una enfermera me llevó a un cuarto privado. En él había un cuerpo totalmente vendado. Sus pálidas manos descansaban sobre la camilla. y solo tenía unos hoyos para las orejas, la nariz y la boca.
¿Y quién era?
Escuché una voz muy débil decirme: sé que no me queda mucho tiempo, sé que se acerca el final.
¿Era un judío?
Mi nombre es Carl, me dijo, y me alisté a las SS como voluntario.
¿Un miembro de la SS? ¿Un superhombre? ¿Qué podría querer contigo? Un judío sin importancia para él.
Me dijo que tenía que contarme un suceso, que si no, no podría morir tranquilo, y que me lo contaba justo porque yo era judío. Yo no nací siendo un asesino, me dijo. Yo nací en Stuttgart y tengo 21 años. Mi madre me educó en la religión católica. Yo era un niño bueno, pero como casi todos los jóvenes de mi edad, me alisté en las juventudes hitlerianas, convencido de que hacía lo mejor por mi patria.
Lo mejor por su patria. Continúa, Simón.
Me contó de un día en cierta aldea rusa. Los rusos habían minado muchos edificios. Como represalia, los nazis agarraron unos 300 judíos, en su mayoría mujeres y ancianos, y los metieron adentro de una casa y los apilaron en el interior. Recibimos la orden de retirar nuestras semillas de mano de nuestras granadas y de arrojarlas en el interior.
¡Malditos sean! Algún día sus cabezas van a rodar. Algún día serán ellos los que pidan por su vida y la de sus familias. Pero aún no entiendo. ¿Por qué te contaba todo esto justamente a ti? ¿Quería torturarte?
Justo lo contrario. Me contó que esa noche trató de beber todo lo que pudo para olvidar lo que pasó, pero no lo logró. Al siguiente día en combate, veía en las caras de sus enemigos a todos los inocentes que había asesinado el día anterior. Una bomba cayó al lado de él y perdió el conocimiento. Tengo muchos dolores, me dijo, pero el peor de todos es el de mi conciencia. Y entonces me pidió perdón.
¿Qué?
Como lo oyen, textualmente me dijo: de las largas noches en las que espero que venga la muerte, he deseado una y otra vez poder hablar de esto con un judío y rogarle que me perdone, aunque no sé si queden judíos vivos. Sé que te estoy pidiendo demasiado, pero si no, no podré morir en paz.
¿Un superhombre le pide a un subhumano que haga algo sobrehumano? ¿Y qué hiciste?
Como en automático, le solté la mano, me levanté y me fui.
¡Bravo por ti! Por un momento temí que lo hubieras perdonado.
No sé si debí haberlo hecho. En sus palabras había un sincero arrepentimiento.
Viste agonizar a un asesino. Me gustaría poder hacer eso 10 veces al día. Sin embargo, él no nació siendo un asesino, ni quería hacerlo. Fueron los generales los que le hicieron matar a toda esa gente indefensa. Él lanzó esas granadas por voluntad propia. Nadie le forzó la mano. ¿Sabes? Cuando nos contaste tu encuentro con el soldado de la SS, al principio tuve miedo de que lo hubieras perdonado. No tenías ningún derecho a hacerlo en nombre de personas que no te dieron su permiso. Si quieres, puedes perdonar y olvidar lo que los demás te hagan a ti. Eso ya es cosa tuya. Pero habría sido un terrible pecado el cargar sobre tu conciencia el sufrimiento de las demás personas.
¿Pero qué acaso no somos una comunidad con un solo destino y uno debe responder por el otro?
Créeme, hiciste lo correcto. Creo en el Olama-ORT, en la vida después de la muerte, en un mundo mejor donde todos nos encontramos después de morir. Pero ¿qué hubiera pasado si lo hubieras perdonado? ¿Acaso no irían a tu encuentro las víctimas de aquí a aldea rusa y te preguntarían ¿quién te dio permiso de perdonar a nuestro asesino? Por otro lado, ya no le quedaba tiempo para arrepentirse de sus crímenes, y en su lecho de muerte veía a Simón como un símbolo, como un representante de todos los judíos con los que no podía hablar ni contactar. Y si en sus palabras había un sincero arrepentimiento, y no estaba solamente tratando de excusarse por sus actos de barbarie, sino que realmente estaba arrepentido por lo que había hecho, sí se merecía la clemencia del perdón.
Vi que estaba realmente atormentado.
Ese tormento no es más que una pequeña parte de su castigo. Si te lo hubieras perdonado, no te lo perdonarías en toda tu vida.
Una parte de mí piensa que sí lo debiera haber perdonado. Jamás había visto un nazi disculparse de esa manera. Pero otra parte de mí considera que solo la víctima puede perdonar a su victimario.
No creo que tu perdón verbal haya sido necesario. Y uno no miente cuando se enfrenta cara a cara con la muerte. Se ve que cuando él estaba a punto de morir, recuperó la fe de su infancia y murió en paz, porque escuchaste su confesión y su lamento.
De todas maneras, él tendrá un girasol en su tumba. Para mí no habrá ningún girasol. A mí me enterrarán en una fosa común, en la que los cuerpos se tirarán sobre mí.
Es un gran honor para mí presentar a nuestra invitada especial de esta noche, la doctora Racheli Kreisberg. Racheli es la nieta del legendario cazador de nazis, Simón Wiesenthal, quien dedicó su vida a llevar a los nazis y sus colaboradores ante la justicia. Como custodia delegada de su abuelo, Racheli ha continuado su trabajo en el campo de la remembranza y la educación sobre el Holocausto. Ha convertido una de sus misiones de vida inspirar a las futuras generaciones a luchar contra el antisemitismo y la injusticia. Es un honor tenerla con nosotros esta noche para compartir sus ideas sobre la vida y obra de su difunto abuelo. Welcome to OLAMI-ORT, Dr. Kreisberg. Please join us on the stage. Hi, Dr. Racheli. If it's okay with you, can I ask a few questions so that we can learn about your late grandfather?
Of course. But maybe I can start and say something
Yes,
to the audience. I don't see you, but I know that you're here. Sharon approached me, or the community approached me about, I think, 2 or 3 months ago with the invitation to join you for Yom Hashoá. And when I told my mother, who is my grandfather's sole daughter, that I'm invited to participate at the Yom Hashoá event in Mexico, my mother told me how enthusiastic my grandfather always was with his visit in Mexico, and he had very good bonds with Mexico. And when I was in Vienna visiting the Vienna Wiesenthal Institute in January this year, I asked him for a few documents about the interaction that my grandfather had with Mexico. So I got a bunch of letters that I don't understand, and I got a few pictures, some of them with people that seemed quite old. The pictures were taken in the, let's say, in the late 80s. And I saw one picture with a person who looked a little bit younger at the time, and I thought it would be great if I would know who these people were. Then we had our call, right? Because Sharon prepared this evening very well, and we were talking about what are the expectations and how we're going to conduct this evening. And then at some point I showed Sharon the picture, and she said, this is Ishai, or you call him Ishi, Gitlin. And this is very moving for me because it brought me in contact with Ishi, and he remembered working with my grandfather, and therefore I was very grateful that you identified the picture and that we closed this circle.
Thank you so much for the anecdote. So, if it's okay with you, let's start. Can you tell us about Simón Wiesenthal's upbringing? Where was he born? What was his family like? And what did he do for a living?
Okay, so Simón Wiesenthal was born in Galicia, in a shtetl, a small village called Buchach, where Shai Agnon was born. And he was born on the 31st of December 1908 in Buchach. And he had a brother, a younger brother, and his 2 parents. And he was a young student at the gymnasium. But at a very young age, he already lost his father, who died in 1915 during the war, his brother, and his mother, Rosa, after whom my mother is named. She remarried and she moved to another town. So Simón Wiesenthal remained alone in Buchach, and the only person that he sort of interacted with and with her family was a lady, or a young girl at the time, called Zila Müller. Zila will become my grandmother, and that it was the beginning of the love story of my grandparents that lasted for 67 years. So Simon and Sila both graduated from the gymnasium in Buchach, and then my grandfather decided that he wanted to become an architect. He studied in Lemberg and in Prague, and he started working as an architect. You can see some of the buildings that he built in the style of the Bauhaus. And this was what my grandparents were doing prior to the war.
Thank you very much. And did they have any children before the war?
No, my grandparents did not have any children. They got married in 1936, and they had no children before the war.
Thank you. What was his experience during the war? And how did he manage to survive?
Okay, so I think that my grandfather used his skills, and these were very well developed. One of the skills he had is that he was an architect, so he knew how to draw. And when he was working for what is called the Ostbahn, the railroad or the trains of the east, the Ostbahn, he was drawing on the trains the drawings that were requested by the Nazis. And this is one thing that he did. But the other thing is that Simón Wiesenthal was always very networked, and he knew how to find his way. And that way he found the possibility to get false papers for my grandmother, who worked in forced labor in Germany. And this was, I think, a second asset. A third asset is that he is a survivor, and this is also how he defines himself. He knew how to survive, he had the reason to survive, and I think that his life shows that he will always call himself a survivor.
Thank you. How did Simón Wiesenthal's experience as a Holocaust survivor influence his work? What motivated him to become a Nazi hunter?
Okay, so Simón Wiesenthal, as I told you, was living in Lemberg, and the concentration camp next to Lemberg was Janowska concentration camp. First it was a ghetto, then it was a concentration camp, and my grandfather went in and out of this ghetto. At some point, he was arrested, and he tried to escape, and he committed suicide, which was unsuccessful, luckily enough. And he healed and became more or less healthy again. And this brought him towards, I would say, the end of the war, while the March of the Living started. And from the east, that means from the Ukraine, where he was situated, he moved through several concentration camps till he arrived in Mauthausen. Mauthausen is a terrible concentration camp. If you've known and seen pictures of this camp, you can see the steps, that the quarries where people had to carve the stones, and as the steps were very steep and the people were of course exhausted, they would sometimes fall over and that way kill each other. Simón Wiesenthal was not working at these steps because he arrived very ill to the concentration camp, and he was in what is called the infirmary, a sort of hospital. And when Mauthausen was liberated by the Americans, by Colonel Seibel, then he saw that things are changing. The changes were maybe multiple, but one of them was that people started looking for their families. Everyone wanted to know, where is my family? But another thing that Simón Wiesenthal saw is that there's a change in the camp, and the Germans are all of a sudden afraid. They are afraid, and he wasn't used to that, of course. And that brought him to the notion that maybe they are now also responsible for what they did. And when he saw a situation in which an American investigated a Nazi, he thought that this is something that maybe he can also contribute to. And he asked the Americans, please take me, I would like to work for you. And this is how the work of Simón Wiesenthal started in the early years when Mauthausen was liberated. And from Mauthausen he moved to Linz, and he was living on the street where the family of Adolf Eichmann was living, only about 100 meters away from the family And this is when he learned about Eichmann, because Eichmann was not someone who was known to the Jews. We of course suffered from the final solution, but Eichmann was not the Nazi that you would see in the camps. And this is, I think, the beginning of the career that Simón Wiesenthal took upon himself to search for Nazis and their collaborators.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your grandmother, Sila. Did they manage to get together after the war? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so of course my grandparents got together because otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it's a nice story how they got together, and it was the following. I told you that Simón Wiesenthal, he got false papers from my grandmother, and therefore she was in Germany during the war. After the war, she went to Warsaw, and she was probably also looking for family. What can she do? How can she resume her life? And Simon, my grandfather, he was at the time in the deportation camp called Wintermichel, also it's near Mauthausen. And he asked a person called Dr. Birni, who went to Warsaw, if he can look for a lady called Zila Müller-Wiesenthal. And Dr. Birni said, okay, I'll do that. And he went to Warsaw, and he put a note, I'm looking for Zila Wiesenthal. But what happened was that 3 women came up to Dr. Birni and said, I am Zila Wiesenthal. So Dr. Birni had to make a decision, who is the right Zila Wiesenthal. And he made his decision, or he made his choice. Maybe later on he said, because if she would not have been my grandfather's wife, then he would have married her. So I think that's a great compliment for my grandmother. And this is when my grandparents united in 1945, and in 1946 my mother was born, Paulina. And Paulina, my mother, she is named after my great-grandmothers, Rosa, Paike Shoshana. And here you can see the picture of the young couple, Simon and Zila Wiesenthal. And here above me you can see them sitting in the Wintermichel deportation camp. And many, many, many years later, you can see them with their great-granddaughter, Ella, who is my oldest daughter.
Amazing story. Thank you so much. Did Simón Wiesenthal have many allies and adversaries in his pursuit for justice? Can you share with us some examples of the good and the bad times he faced?
Okay. So if you think about where was Simón Wiesenthal physically working, okay? He was in Austria. He was where the people who were active in the war, Nazis collaborated, would return to and would resume their life. And they had this person who was in the middle. He was disturbing them. He wanted to do something which was actually risking them. And therefore, I think that my grandfather was very much in danger in Vienna. I was in Vienna now last month in mid-March, because the Austrian government nowadays awards a Simón Wiesenthal Prize. And last March, the 2nd prize was awarded, among others to Zikaron Barcelona, which we had yesterday. And one of the things that I spoke about there, and it was very, it came very natural. I didn't prepare this because it was a panel, and in a panel you are much less in control, but you're doing it very nicely, so I feel very good. But one of the things that I mentioned in Vienna, which of course I cannot say here, is that Simón Wiesenthal and I, as a granddaughter who visited Vienna very often, could feel that as well, felt fear. Okay? There was not only that he was hunted, he was a hunter himself, but he was also hunted, and therefore there was police. I remember very well, there was a police officer in the front of the house, in the back of the house, and there were police officers near his office in the 1st Bezirk, in the 1st district, and he was not beloved. Only later, okay, because I do want to say this to you as well, only many years later, and especially today, my grandfather is, I would say, very, very warmly embraced in Vienna. And this is an entire revolution, and it's a pity that my grandfather did not experience this. during his lifetime, because the values that he stands for are very universal values that today are very acceptable by Austria.
Thank you so much. What did Simón Wiesenthal teach his daughter and grandchildren based on his experience? Did he talk about his experience at home?
Okay. So, I don't think that my grandfather taught nor his daughter, who's my mother, nor us anything about the Holocaust, not about his experiences. My grandfather was very, very devoted to his work. While I was sitting here in the front row there, at the beginning of the ceremony and throughout the first part, I was looking at the picture of my grandfather. Now I can't see it, but it's a little bit in front of you, in front of me, but you can see it very well. And what I saw when I was looking at the picture is that there are the eyes of Simón Wiesenthal, and it's my grandfather. Even though he passed away, he's still my grandfather. And he can be, here he is, yes, right behind me. And you can see that he is looking, okay? I feel that he's looking at me. But what I can tell you, and that's the reason I think that I'm here, because you can all see, if you look at the picture, that he might be looking at anyone, and he probably is. But what I can tell you from a personal angle is I remember this mustache, okay? I remember coming to my grandparents, and you politely had to kiss 1, 2, I'm from Holland, so we do it 3 times. And this beard, okay, was always so itchy. It was very unpleasant. Why am I saying this? Because we grew up as a family in the shadow of the Holocaust. We were not part of my grandfather's mission. We were a family, okay? We were meals, we were holidays, we were any normal life that a family could have. So I didn't have the opportunity to talk to my grandfather about his work, but I only saw him. And by observing, you can learn a lot. Because I feel that I have seen, I was 38 years old when my grandfather passed away. Wow, what a man this was. The energy, the devotion, the ability to overcome a lot of suffering, also from his side, a lot of failure, okay? I come from Israel, and we always say Israel is the startup nation, and one of the things that turns Israel into a startup nation is that you can fail. He failed, but he also succeeded. He succeeded big time.
He did. What is it like to be a relative of Simón Wiesenthal? Do you feel it carries an additional responsibility?
Okay. So Simón Wiesenthal has several family members, right? He has several relatives. There is my mother. There's also my father, who always says that no one remembers him, because it's always Simón Wiesenthal, his daughter, and his grandchildren. So my father used to mention this. And we are 3 siblings. I'm the oldest, and I have 2 brothers. My brother Danny, who's called Dan Ashel. He's named after my grandfather's father, whom I told you was killed during World War I, and my younger brother, Yuri. And so we're a very small family, and for reasons that are unknown to me, I was the only person, also when my grandfather was alive, who felt that this person is doing something which is really, really important. And I tried to accompany my grandfather, because he did not have that company from his wife, from my grandmother. My grandmother was not part of this. My mother was also not part of this. And actually it was a bond that I had with my father, that we sometimes went to these events. When my grandfather passed away, I started commemorating him. I think it's very important. I think that Simón Wiesenthal, he did not forget the 6 million Jews. We know this. And I think it's important that we will not forget him, because it's important to remember what he stood for, so that we will be able to implement that. And therefore, I took this upon myself as a mission. I also have a normal job. I serve as innovation attaché at the Dutch Embassy in Israel. I develop R&D collaboration between Israel and the Netherlands. But it's a huge project to commemorate my late grandfather. And I do this, as you can see, that's the reason why I'm here.
Thank you so much. Continuing with your answer, Simón Wiesenthal once said, "After our death, we will meet all these people who were killed by the Nazis. And when they ask me, what are you doing after the war? I will tell them, I didn't forget you. How do you think his work impacted Holocaust victims and their families?
Thanks for the question. I think, and I also spoke about this morning with the children. I also want to thank OLT OLAMI for inviting me here, not only to talk to you this evening, but also to have the privilege to talk to your children and to your grandchildren. And what I did this morning, I was telling them a little bit about a day in Simon and Sila's life. And I tried to point out some of the key messages that my grandfather's work stands for. One of them is listed here. It's justice, not vengeance, but there were also others. And I mentioned this morning, for instance, that by contributing to the capture of Adolf Eichmann and bringing him to court, the dignity of the Jewish people was restored. So the fact that we now feel that we are not only katzon latevach, but we now understand what happened. We cannot judge these people anymore. I remember that Avi, even though you speak in Spanish and I don't understand Spanish, but you were talking about the state of Israel, about Medinat Israel, and I think you were talking about the debate when should Yom Hashoá take place. Okay, so this is an important thing. The kavod shel ha'am ha'yehudi. The second thing, which I think is that I heard this yesterday evening when we had the Zikaron Basalon from the Museum of Tolerance, that I know that the Israeli delegation visited this afternoon, that it's not only about Jews. And my grandfather was not only looking for perpetrators and Nazis that murder Jews, but also for gypsies and homosexuals and other minorities. So the very universal approach to justice, not only looking at the Jews as the victims, but also others. And maybe I'll just say one more thing as an example, because it is for me something that I feel close to. I was born in the Netherlands, and of course you all know the diary of Anna Frank. But in the 50s, while my grandfather was living in Linz, there was a rumor during a play that took place in Vienna about Anna Frank, that the diary is that the diary is fake. And here you can also see how smart my grandfather was, and he decided that he's going to devote time and energy to look for the Gestapo officer who arrested the family of Anna Frank. And he managed to do that, also with the help of a lot of friends, good friends that he had in the Netherlands. And what you can see here, you can see Anna Frank on the right-hand side, and in the middle you can see the picture of Karl Silberbauer. And Karl Silberbauer, he was a police officer who went back to his work in Vienna. He was actually working not so far away from where my grandfather was working. And when Karl Silberbauer was arrested, he admitted that he was indeed the one who arrested the family of Anna Frank. And by doing this, my grandfather made sure that the Holocaust cannot be denied. Okay, I think that I can give more examples, but I think this is sufficient.
Excellent, thank you. What do you think Simón Wiesenthal would say about the rise of anti-Semitism in today's society? How can his work continue to inspire future generations to fight against anti-Semitism and injustice?
Thank you. That's the only question that I sort of had a problem with. And the reason is twofold. One is that I don't like talking in the name of my grandfather. You have to understand, I sit here, it's very complex, okay? I'm a person myself. I don't know what my grandfather would have thought. I only can imagine some of the things, but I'm a scientist, and I don't like talking about things that I just imagine. But during the first part, I was thinking about an answer to your question. And my answer is as follows. I think, and I will be, I'll take a risk, okay, by saying this, but I believe in what I'm saying. I work in innovation. I work in something that bridges countries. In the simplest form, it's between two friendly companies, the Netherlands and Israel. But one of the things that I do today, I work a lot in the field of energy and hydrogen, is that I try to develop regional collaboration. I say, I know that I'm living in the Middle East, and it's a very dangerous environment, but I can do something. what can I do? I can try and see if there is a possibility to develop any economic bonds. Is there anything I can do which will enable, not me personally, okay, it's not for me, it's also not for the entire Netherlands or the entire Israel, but at I would say, a micro scope, can I do something which will reduce some of the anti-Semitism that exists in our region, some of the hatred that exists. And this, I think, is my message, okay? This is what I believe in. I can commemorate my late grandfather, I do this with a lot of love, but when it comes to nowadays, I feel my own responsibility to try and see whether we can, it sounds like bombastic, but whether we can make this world a better world. And one way is to develop collaboration. I grew up in a way that collaboration always showed me that we both benefit from it. And this is what I think I would like to do, and I hope that this is something that resonates in any of your heart.
Thank you. So, what could parents and schools do to help educate children about the Shoah and the importance of standing up against hate and injustice?
Okay, so I think that I know that I'm in a school now, and it's an important environment, and I think that the school's role is to teach the children the history, to teach the children anything that is related to what happened to the Jewish people. And I think that this school does an excellent job by the activities that Avi told me are happening here around the International Holocaust Memorial Day, about the Holocaust Memorial Day, and therefore I think this is great. The other thing is, what can the parents do? Okay, I always looked at it from a different point of view. Parents can do something else. Parents don't have to necessarily, again it's my view, don't necessarily have to teach. I'm not a historian, but I, as a mother, I can provide values, morals, and therefore I think that if I take your question and I will divide it, then I would let the school, the educational system, teach about the Holocaust and make sure that there will be no ignorance. And on the other hand, I think that it's important that the families will carry on this concept of what happened to the Jewish people. And I will just end by saying that yesterday, during the Zikaron Basalon, we raised this question of how should we commemorate and how should we actually teach the Holocaust. And there were people that said we should do this through the personal stories, because if it's not personal, then it's just 6 million people without any faces or any lives. And there were others that said, no, we should have it in a rigorous way. And what we did yesterday evening is we read a small fraction from a Megillat HaShoah, which exists also in a translation into Spanish. And I think that this is a nice way in which we can combine both worlds, because Machon Shechter in Jerusalem is the one who worked on this Megillah, so again, they're from the educational point of view, but we, in our houses, could use the Megillat HaShoah, in order to carry on the Shoah education in a home environment.
I agree on the combination of the rigorous historic event and the testimonies of the people who went through it. Thank you so much. So finally, what message would you like to share with our audience about the importance of remembering Simón Wiesenthal's legacy and his ongoing search for justice?
I know that you guys up there have the slides, so can you just show me my last slide that I used this morning? Okay, so first of all, what you can do, okay, is to remember my grandfather. But this is a big word, okay, remember. You can also do something which is very simple, but it is symbolic, and I think it helps. We have a website. Here you can see the URL, or the address of the website. And in this website, there is quite a lot of information. But one of the nice and simplest things you can do is you can light a digital memorial candle for Simón Wiesenthal. In the middle, you have the names of many countries, Mexico among them. And we enable people to light a memorial candle for Simón Wiesenthal in 4 places. In Buchach, you remember I told you he was born in Buchach, in Mauthausen, where he was liberated, I told you about this, in Vienna, where he worked and passed away in 2005. And what I did not tell you is that my grandfather is interred in Herzliya in Israel. And you can then enter your name and affiliation. And I can say that since yesterday evening, when we did the Zikaron Salon, there were 6 digital candles from Mexico, and today we already have 54. And Avi told me that many candles will be lit. And this is one thing that you can do to commemorate Simón Wiesenthal.
Thank you so much. We are truly honored to have you here in Mexico City to teach us about your late grandfather's legacy. And I know you have done an amazing job in the field of Holocaust remembrance and commemoration. Can you share with the audience some of your personal work? Can you show us how they can find some other things in the website?
Yes. Is it possible to get a little bit of light that I can see the audience? There is some light, but I'd like a little bit more. Oh, you flat. Thank you. I will tell you a personal story, and then I'll show you something in a form of a presentation, which will make it easy for you to follow. Am I talking too fast, or is it okay? Fine, okay. You asked me what I know. We knew very little. I did not even know who my grandparents' family members were. I started genealogy at a very young age. Genealogy, the research of family history, usually older people do this. Usually people start researching their family roots when there's no one to ask. I don't know why, but I started doing this when I was 32 years old. And I had 7 of the 8 branches. I just lacked 1 branch, and that was the branch of Simón Wiesenthal. As you can imagine, I did ask my grandfather. I came once to Vienna with about 90 pages of testimony, and I said, Opatje, because this is how I called him, can you please help me and give me all these names of your and Sila's family members that were murdered. My grandfather had a fabulous memory, okay? Today we use computers, but he had a fabulous memory. And I got back with 17 pages of testimony. He did not remember, he didn't know, and okay, I had to leave this. When my grandfather passed away in September 2005, my mother enabled Tom Segev, the historian, to write another biography about my grandfather, or last biography. To do that, she enabled Tom Segev to enter into my grandfather's archive. And I asked Tom, I was then 38 years old, I asked Tom, can you please send me the personal letters? The letters in which it is written, Dear Cousin. Now, Dear Cousin, okay, I can also call you Sharon, I can call you Cousin. It's out of amicable, it's an amicable name. It doesn't really mean that Sharon is my cousin, and she's not. But I thought this could be a good beginning, it could be a good start. And by having the letters of Simón Wiesenthal that were written to people that I thought that they could be family members, and I'm a scientist, eventually you see that you have enough evidence and you can make the connection, I was able to reconstruct the family tree of Simón Wiesenthal. Simón Wiesenthal was born in Buchach, but the family of Simón Wiesenthal is not from Buchach, they're from Skala Podolska, also a Galician shtetl. When I felt that I now have enough information on the family Wiesenthal, I decided to look at all the people, all the Jews that were living in Skala Podolska. Now, you know, these are small shtetls. We're talking about thousands of people. It's not a large number. And therefore, I decided that I will now map the houses in which the Jews lived. I know that a large part of the OLAMI-ORT, or the Sephardi community here, is from the Eastern European countries, such as Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, and you know that we're looking for that information. Where did our ancestors live before the war? Okay, it's important to us. It's an act of commemoration, of closing these circles. And I did that for Skala Podolska. I developed a database, a knowledge base of the houses in which the Jews lived. In a house, many people could live in that house. In that house, you could have people that I would not even think that they're related. I could assume they're related. I could maybe also prove that. And by doing that, I saw that I can find new information. I know it's becoming complex, and therefore I'll start using my presentation. It will make it easier for you, but just to finish my thought. If I have a house in Saloniki, okay, and I know the residents, and I know that there is a map, a cadastral map, a map that was the map that showed the houses in, I will go back to Galicia, in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. A beautiful map. But how can I position that map on Google Map? And what we developed what is called SWIGI, the Simón Wiesenthal Genealogy, Family History, Geolocation Initiative. We developed technology which enable us to take that house in Saloniki. We have today a cadastral map of Kastoria. Is anyone here from Kastoria? In Greece? No? Okay. But we can do that. We can take that house, put the house on the right place, and then you have information on the residents of that house. And what I believe in is, it's true, every person has a name. But what is more important is, every person has a family. If I can show who are the descendants of that person who lived in that house in Istanbul, and how are they related to me, it becomes very meaningful to me, because I'm alive and I would like to know who were my ancestors. And if one of these people was murdered, I would like to light a digital memorial candle for that person, to commemorate that person, and maybe also to develop a personal biography. And this is what we developed, and with your permission, because it is probably very, very abstract, I would like to show you that. Is that okay with you? Yes? Okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah. Do you remember that map, right? That's part of the website. Let me just show you the website. Let me show you the website. This is the website. The website is comprised of 4 pillars. On the left-hand side, you have the commemoration of Simón Wiesenthal, including the candles that I showed you, the life story of Simón Wiesenthal, streets and other institutions that are named after Simón Wiesenthal. And in pillars 2, 3, and 4, you have what we call the SWIGI platform, the geolocation of family trees on maps, deportations, and our educational programs. And I will try and show you an example. Have a look here. This is today the Ukraine. Okay, what we see here, you remember I told you about Skala Podolska? This is Skala Podolska. In yellow, you can see houses that were owned by Jews, in which Jews lived. In orange, you see houses that were owned by non-Jews, in which Jews lived. And in red, you see houses in which non-Jews lived, and they were owned by non-Jews. This is information that is between 200 and 150 years old. These are houses in which people lived in the mid-19th century, and we are able to position them on the map of Skala. Now look, if I will take this pegman and move it into, you see what we see now? We see Skala Podolska as it is today. And we will show you where are the location of the houses. This is, of course, these are not the houses anymore. We show you the location of the houses. You're with me, right? Okay, because I will try and show it to you now online instead of showing you the presentation. But if I lose you, just tell me. Going back. Let's have a look at house number 27. Let's see who lived in this house. There will be a list, right? I told you we will see a list of residents in a given house. 1 second. I needed to. Look at this. This is a list of people living in the house based on what we call vital records, birth, death, marriage records, taxpayers, voters. But what is very unique is that we have a family tree. You can see a family tree here for people. This does not mean that all these people living in this house are family. We can have more families in a house. But I will show you one thing, and hopefully this will be sufficient. Let's have a look at, yes, let's have a look at Simón Wiesenthal. This is the family tree of Simón Wiesenthal. It's very unique because we are standing on a map. It's like I drive here in Mexico, so we all use Waze to find our way. On a map, we have trees, family trees. Now let's have a look for a sec at the family tree of Simón Wiesenthal. I told you quite a lot about him. Simón Wiesenthal was Simón Wiesenthal's great-grandmother. This is Simón Wiesenthal, and here is Simón Wiesenthal. This is Hillel, his brother who passed away. This is his father, Ashel Hensel, who died in 1915. Now if I will go to, first of all, this is nice, right? We're in Galicia, we're standing on some kind of map, and we can see this. But look at this. If I will go to Simón Wiesenthal, into his record, I can go to his house. Where was his house? Where is this house? In Vienna. So what we developed is a technology in which we can move from a house in Skala Podolska in the Ukraine to a house in Vienna through the family tree. And here you can see it. So if you go here, if you visit Vienna, you could see the house is in here. So this is just to show you what we have developed, because I don't want to take all the time. I will show you just one more example. If I go into Vienna, and I will show you all the information we have about the houses in Vienna. These are houses in which the Jews lived, and they're buried in Vienna, in the Zentralfriedhof, in the central cemetery in Vienna. And we also have houses of the 65, we also have the 65,000, no, we also have the houses of the 65,000 Jews that were murdered. These are their last addresses. So let's have a look for a sec. For instance, let's have a look at the family Herzl. You want to see the house of Herzl Kacha. This is the house of Herzl. If I go into this house, I'll go into it. I'll see the family of Herzl. So what we have developed is a technology in which we can locate the houses as well as the people. And for a person like Herzl, this is not related to the Holocaust. But if I will go back to the homepage and show you what we are doing for deportation, then you can see that from Vienna, the Jews were deported to all these places. And for every place, we can show you who are the people that were sent to these places. Let me just give you as an example. Just going to go into this. This is Theresienstadt. 228 people were sent to Theresienstadt from Vienna. We want to remember them. I'm not here only to ask you to remember Simón Wiesenthal. I'm here so that together we can remember the 6 million Jews. And how can we do this? In my opinion, by developing their family trees, so we will understand how are they related to us, and to develop a Holocaust memorial, or Simón Wiesenthal Holocaust memorial. So what you can see, that Elsa Abeles has a family tree. And this gives me a good feeling, because it means that someone is related to her. This is her family tree. What you can also see is that, sorry, actually I forgot to myself here. That she has a memorial page. because we really don't want to forget her. This is her memorial page. Now, as it's too small, let's go to the home page and have a look at the fourth pillar of the memorial pages. Look here at the left-hand side, and this is going to be my last thing. This is a memorial page of Clara Borstel Engelsman. She was 100 years old when she was in Westerbork. Westerbork was one of the transportation camps. It was a concentration camp, but not like we know of others. And Clara celebrated her 100th birthday in Westerbork and was sent to Auschwitz and was murdered at the age of 102. But what we do, what we enable, is to develop the personal memorial page of Clara Borstel Engelsman, but also to link to her family tree from this memorial and to go to her address in Amsterdam, from this page. This is what we develop, and I think that this is giving you some kind of idea of what SWIGI stands for, and this is in the name of Simón Wiesenthal, and I think that this project is important for the people who would like to remember the people that were murdered.
Thank you. How can we light the candles?
Okay. So what you can do is you go into the website. Sorry, you're actually here. I apologize. You're here, and then you can go here and light a candle. When you do this, you will choose either an existing camp, concentration camp, place of murder, or you will write a place that is at the moment unknown to us, but we will enter it. You will add all the information of the person you want to remember, whether it's his, can you scroll it down for me and I'll be here? Okay, so you will enter the camp, then you have the first, last, and maiden name of the person you want to commemorate, the birth date, the birth address, the birth country, and then you enter information about the date of death of the person, where did he live, what was his last known address, and what is the name of his father and his mother. And then moving to the blue part, you can add a picture, and then you can, in this box, you can write something about the biography, and you can cite the source of the information, and here you can choose the file, which is your family tree. I know it's very challenging, okay? It's very difficult to build a family tree, but if you are doing this, you could do that. Then you fill in your personal details, and if you want, you can also make a donation. It's a huge project. We've been working on this now for 20 years. And this is how you submit a memorial page. You as a community, you can also get engaged with us and do a whole project. If you want on a town that a larger part of the community is originally from.
Thank you so much.
¿Quién eres? No me reconoces. No sabes quién soy. Déjame darte una pista. Me conocen como el cazador de nazis.
No puede ser. ¿Soy yo?
Solamente soy un viejo que contempla su vida en retrospectiva.
Pero te ves tan tranquilo.
Esta tranquilidad que percibes es el resultado de una larga vida, vivida con un propósito.
Con un propósito. Hace tan solo 2 años estaba en el campo de concentración, en las puertas del mismo infierno, debilitado, deshumanizado, sin sueños ni esperanzas, pesando tan solo 45 kilos. ¿Cómo puedes ver hacia atrás con ojos tan tranquilos?
Desde donde estás, no podrás comprenderlo. Y puedo decirte lo que vivirás en el futuro, pero te advierto que eso arruinará tu propia historia. Nuestra historia. Lo que sí puedo decirte es que en el futuro encontrarás más un sentido para tu vida, y tu historia será contada, repetida y escuchada por muchos en el futuro. Serás amado por tus seguidores y serás temido por tus enemigos.
Tendré seguidores y enemigos. ¿Cómo podrá alguien creer todo lo que vivía en el campo? A veces ni yo mismo lo creo y pienso que todo fue un sueño.
Pero encontraste a tu esposa, a Sila. Contra toda probabilidad, ambos sobrevivieron. Eso debe de darte algo de esperanza, ¿no?
Sí, haberla encontrado en la lista de sobrevivientes me dio esperanza. Me abrió los ojos a la importancia de recopilar testimonios, de escuchar todas las historias, escuchar cada historia como si fuera una pieza única en un rompecabezas infinito. Ella y yo nos encontramos, pero millones más no tuvieron la misma suerte.
Pero ahora que ya se encontraron, podrán formar una familia.
Entre los dos perdimos casi 90 miembros de nuestra familia. Eso me abrió los ojos a dimensionar la magnitud de la tragedia. ¿Cómo poblar un desierto? ¿Cómo tener un hijo, un niño, una niña que no va a conocer a sus abuelos, tíos o primos?
Pero es la única manera de continuar. Y formarán una familia numerosa. Te lo dice la voz de la experiencia.
No puedo imaginarlo.
Claro que no. En este momento estás ocupado en tu labor de investigación, reuniendo datos, recopilando archivos, revisando testimonios, buscando evidencias hasta debajo de las piedras, revisando mares de cartas y fotografías en las oficinas de investigación criminal para encontrar a tus verdugos, a los verdugos de tu pueblo. Te veo tan joven, a veces me siento tan lejos de ti, de lo que fui. Dime, ¿te sientes todo el tiempo consumido por el odio?
No. Odiar es como comer. No puedes comer todo el tiempo, te cansas. No puedes vivir comiendo para siempre. No puedes vivir odiando para siempre.
Entonces,
no soy un Sherlock Holmes judío ni un Don Quijote de la Mancha. Yo solo soy alguien que paga con su trabajo por el privilegio de seguir con vida. Solo así seré libre. No conoceré la libertad sin antes conocer la justicia.
La justicia. ¿Y será suficiente llevar a los criminales al tribunal sin ensuciarte las manos?
Tiene que serlo. Es la única manera de asegurar, de recordarle a la gente lo que vivimos. Quiero encontrarlos con vida y que todos paguen por sus crímenes, aunque estén dispersos por el mundo, viviendo vidas falsas, con identidades falsas. Aunque parezca imposible, encontrarlos sería casi un milagro.
Ah, entonces sí crees en los milagros. Después del gueto, después de Mauthausen, ¿crees que los encontrarás? Y si los encuentras, ¿crees que podrás enfrentarlos? Decídete, ¿eres un realista o un idealista?
Un judío debe de creer en los milagros. Un judío que no cree en los milagros no es realista. Pero dime, ¿por qué me interrogas? Tú ya viviste todo esto. Vamos, dame algo de esperanza.
Mira, la vida se vive hacia adelante y solo puede comprenderse en retrospectiva. Si te digo lo que vivirás en el futuro, ¿qué buscarás? ¿Y a qué aspirarás entonces?
Los encontraré. Tendré suficiente vida, suficiente entereza para enfrentar a mis verdugos. Encontraré a Eichmann, a Mengele. No, mejor no me lo digas. Ese no es el objetivo. El objetivo es registrar, conectar y recolectar información para que las generaciones futuras no tengan que pasar por lo que nosotros pasamos. Porque lo que nos pasó a nosotros puede pasar de nuevo. La única alternativa es la tolerancia y la fe.
Y la fe será tu estandarte. Y gracias a ella reunirás a muchísimas personas que se unirán a tu búsqueda. Hay algo que sí puedo decirte. Cuando los sobrevivientes del Holocausto nos encontremos en el otro mundo y veamos a las personas que murieron en la guerra, todos nos preguntarán lo mismo. ¿Tú qué hiciste después de la guerra? Y una persona dirá, pues me hice joyero. Otra persona dirá, contrabandeé café americano y cigarrillos. Otra persona dirá, me puse a vender casas. Pero tú no. Tú dirás, no me he olvidado de ti. No me he olvidado de ustedes.
En nombre de todos los participantes, me gustaría expresar mi más sincero agradecimiento a la comunidad sefaradí de México y al Colegio OLAMI-ORT por organizar este evento. Su dedicación y compromiso para mantener las raíces culturales y espirituales de nuestro pueblo son ejemplo para todos. Gracias de nuevo a todos los presentes por esta maravillosa oportunidad de aprender, conectar y conmemorar el día de Yom Hashoá de Agburá juntos. Recordar y nunca olvidar. Buenas noches.